I've always believed that a life of quiet dignity is a life well lived. At 64, my days are simple yet full. I rise early in my small London flat, brew my tea, and spend the morning tending to my modest garden. The roses are my pride, though the tulips remind me of Sophie's childhood, the way she used to dance through the petals in bare feet. That memory alone is enough to make my mornings warm, even when the London fog chills the streets. Sophie has always been the center of my world. From the day she was born, I devoted myself to her happiness. I remember walking home from the hospital with her in my arms, feeling an overwhelming sense of responsibility, a love so deep it sometimes scared me. I worked long hours as an engineer, often missing weekends and holidays, but never begrudged a moment, knowing that every sacrifice was for her. Her laughter filled our home. The first time she spoke, her tiny voice calling "Daddy" sent shivers down my spine. I stayed awake nights when she had nightmares, comforted her when she fell and scraped her knee, and celebrated every little success, from her first school project to her final university exams. Each milestone was a thread in the tapestry of our lives together. Sophie was spirited, ambitious, sometimes stubborn. I indulged her whims, but always tried to instill values of kindness, patience, and respect. Watching her grow into a confident, intelligent young woman was my greatest joy. I never imagined that one day my place in her life would feel questioned, as though the years of devotion meant nothing. Then came Daniel Hughes. I first met him at a friend's gathering. He was tall, confident, and ambitious, a man who seemed to know exactly what he wanted. I liked him immediately, though a small part of me worried whether he would truly compliment Sophie. Their courtship was swift, and soon they announced their engagement. I threw myself into the preparations. I helped arrange the wedding, offered advice, contributed financially, and even spent nights researching the perfect gifts. It was a joyous time, and yet beneath the celebration a small unease began to grow. After the wedding, the first hint of change arrived. "Daddy," Sophie said one day, with a polite firmness that surprised me, "we really think it's best if you stay at a hotel when you come to visit. It's more comfortable for all of us." I remember the cold knot in my chest. I forced a smile. "Of course, Sophie, whatever makes you comfortable," I said. The first time I stayed at a hotel, I felt displaced. I wandered through the unfamiliar corridors, a strange ache in my chest. It wasn't just a room, it was a symbol. The familiar closeness we shared had shifted into something formal, distant. Yet I remained silent. I wanted Sophie to be happy, even if it meant stepping back from the place I once held in her life. But the pattern continued. Every visit, every family dinner, every holiday seemed to remind me that my role had changed. The home I had once shared with her, where I had been a constant presence, now felt alien. I began spending evenings reflecting on the past. Rain tapped against my window as I sipped my tea, and memories came flooding back. Sophie's tiny hands clutching mine as we crossed streets, her excited chatter during trips to the park, the nights I stayed awake to soothe her nightmares. And now I obeyed rules I hadn't set, expectations I hadn't agreed to. The hurt was quiet, gnawing at me like a shadow I couldn't shake. I loved my daughter, but I began realizing that love alone wasn't enough to maintain dignity. Anger, I knew, would achieve nothing, but neither could I continue to be invisible in my own life. I decided then that I would find a way to reclaim my space not through confrontation, but through quiet assertion. I would create a life that no one could ignore, one built on my own terms. Weeks later, while sorting through old files, I stumbled upon a folder I hadn't touched in decades. Inside were documents from a long-forgotten investment. My heart skipped a beat. I opened the papers carefully and scanned the numbers. The investment had matured, substantial enough to allow me to buy my own home. It wasn't the money that thrilled me, it was the freedom, independence, a life where I could live for myself without answering to anyone's whims. The thought made a strange, warm excitement bloom in my chest. I could host Sophie and Daniel in my own home, on my own terms, and finally demonstrate without words that I was not invisible. I began looking for apartments discreetly. Every apartment I visited, I pictured it alive with warmth, a cozy reading nook by the window, a kitchen where I could bake, and a balcony with flowers blooming in spring. After weeks of searching, I found the perfect place, a modest flat in a charming neighborhood, quiet yet close to the city. I purchased it entirely on my own, arranging renovations and furnishings according to my taste. The process gave me purpose and a thrill I hadn't felt in years. I imagined Sophie's face when she arrived, expecting the usual hotel room, and discovered I had built a home of my own. The flat was ready. Soft lights glowed in the living room, fresh flowers adorned the windowsill, and the table was set for tea. I even baked scones, just like the ones Sophie had adored as a child. Everything reflected thoughtfulness, independence, and quiet pride. I invited Sophie and Daniel casually, letting them assume I would stay at a hotel. Inside, I felt a strange thrill, a mix of anticipation and calm satisfaction. Soon they would arrive, and I would show them, without anger or confrontation, that I had reclaimed my life. The doorbell rang precisely at 3 o'clock. My heart skipped a beat, though I kept my composure. I opened the door to find Sophie, radiant as ever, and Daniel, smiling politely, both carrying small gifts. "Daddy, we weren't expecting you here," Sophie exclaimed.
I smiled, gesturing them in. "You're here now, aren't you? Let's have some tea." They hesitated, looking around the apartment. Their eyes widened as they took in the tasteful furnishings, the soft lighting, and the aroma of freshly baked scones. This is your place?" Daniel asked, incredulously. I nodded. "Yes, I thought it was time I had a home of my own, and I wanted to share it with you both." Sophie's face shifted from surprise to confusion. She had expected me to book a hotel, to follow the usual routine. She had not anticipated this. We sat at the table. I poured the tea, served the scones, and chatted calmly about small things, the garden, the weather, my new flat. Sophie tried to comment on the differences, on how unexpected it all was. I laughed softly, but there was a quiet authority in my tone. I didn't scold, I didn't demand respect, I simply lived it. Every gesture, every smile, every calm word demonstrated independence, pride, and dignity. The lesson was subtle, yet powerful. The home I had built reflected years of patience, love, and silent endurance. Sophie glanced at me, something flickering in her eyes. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that I did not need her approval to be happy, that I had lived my life fully, not for her, but for myself as well. By the end of the afternoon, Sophie was quieter than usual. Daniel noticed, too, a frown of thoughtfulness creasing his brow. Sophie reached across the table and took my hand.
"Daddy, I didn't realize," she whispered. I'm sorry." I smiled gently. "It's all right, Sophie. You're learning, as I did. Life is about respect, love, and understanding." The tension eased. I could see her reflecting on her own behavior, recognizing the quiet strength I had always had, now embodied in my home, my life, and my choices. Over the following weeks, the family dynamic shifted. Visits became more natural, more respectful. Sophie and Daniel began including me in decisions, asking for advice, sharing their lives openly. I had not demanded it, but it had arrived naturally through patience, dignity, and the quiet power of independence. I felt a strange, peaceful satisfaction. My role as a father had not diminished, it had evolved. We could be together again as a family, without pretenses, without strained routines. Now, I wake each morning in my own flat, sipping tea by the window, watching the London streets awaken. Sophie visits often, and our bond has deepened, tempered by respect and understanding. Daniel, too, has grown more considerate, recognizing the quiet dignity that comes from a life well lived. I have reclaimed my life not through confrontation, but through patience, planning, and calm resolve. And in doing so, I have taught my daughter, and perhaps even myself, the enduring value of independence, love, and respect. The roses bloom each spring, and I smile, thinking of Sophie dancing through their petals long ago. Life has its lessons, but dignity, once regained, is the sweetest victory of all. Thank you for watching this emotional story of Edward Clarke and his quiet victory. Remember, family bonds are precious, but respect and dignity are what keep them strong. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt, true-style stories that touch the heart and teach important life lessons. Share this video with someone who values family and love, because sometimes the quietest victories are the most powerful.